Hi everyone, welcome to Hedgehog Hollow. I'm so excited to be back with the Crafters Workshop. I'm a day late, but hopefully not $1 short, as I've got a great technique for making ombre background panels with distress oxides. You could use any inks, but I particularly like the way the oxides look in this effect. And then we're going to be using embossing, as in heat embossing, for our stenciled background. So, as always, let's get started. So the first thing we want to do is create our background, and I have a piece of the distress stamping paper here. It's really great for blending. If you have any issues with your blending, I'd really recommend trying this. And I have some of the Tonic brushes. You can either use these ones, or they have some great double-ended ones as well, which are more this size. So these say the Nuvo on, and they're double-ended, so you could maybe have one end for the distress ink and one end for the distress oxide. So you can use either of those. And we're going to create somewhat of an ombre effect today. So I'm going to start off with my picked raspberry, and I'm going to load up my brush like this, and I'm just going to work backwards and forwards. So this cardstock is a slightly glossier cardstock, and I'm just laying down a foundation layer. Then I want to go into my worn lipstick. Okay, I'm going to load up that brush and create a nice block of colour. And I may go direct with pads in a minute and show you how to blend them together. I'm going to see how this starts to build up. And then finally I'm going to do a little bit of the Tattered rose, just something nice and pale at the end. So again, just load up your brush. I just do circular motions over the top of my pad, and then you can go direct to your paper. Now if you want something of a bit more of an intense effect, you could take your ink pad and slide it across like this. So you can see I've really loaded it up with ink. You could do the same with your medium colour. So we can just overlap it slightly, and I'll show you how to blend these together. And then you can take your darkest shade, so this for me is my picked raspberry, and I'm just going to hold the edge just while I drag those across like this. And then you can go again back with your brush, and you can start to blend them together and even it out. Now you're going to want to hold just the edges. I'm going to trim the edges off when I start matting it. It will really work on where the two colours meet. So you can see here how they start to seamlessly blend together. Just work backwards and forwards. And then I'm going to do the same, but for the Tattered rose one, I'm going to use the lightest colour because I don't want to detract from that nice pale shade. And so I'm doing exactly the same thing, working backwards and forwards, just moving slightly to the left, slightly to the right, until I get that really nice blend in there. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of my medium tone on that brush now and just start to blend it in. If you have any issues, you can add a little bit of water or just go back with some more ink to reactivate. I'm still just going to hold those two areas because I'm more likely to cut off some of the picked raspberry so it's more even than this one. I'm actually just going to go back in with my ink pad. It's a little bit harder because you do need to hold them down. But just keep working until you're happy with the blend, until you like the effect that you've got. Now the reason I'm using the oxides is because I want to add a bit more interest with some water droplets. So once you've reached a point like this where you're happy with your results, I'm going to get my distress sprayer and I'm going to just do a really light mist. So it's just tiny droplets. You have lots of control if you use the distress sprayer. So I've got some larger dots, some smaller ones, and I'm just going to leave these to oxidize and let this just dry for a second before we add our second layer. So now this is dry, I've also trimmed my panel down a little bit. So it's now 3 3/4 inches across and 5 inches deep, because I'm going to mat it on a black layer that is 5 1/4 inches by 4 inches, which goes onto our A2 card base. So that gives us some nice layering in there. The next thing we want to do is add the detail using our stencil, and I'm using the new Crafters Workshop Floral Radar stencil. So I'm going to pop this down on here, and I'm going to just use, I've got some frog tape here, my purple tape is in use elsewhere, so I'm just using the frog tape. It's a really nice tape to use, trying to not get any over the cardstock. So I'm just putting it down here. And now I'm going to take my Nuvo Clear Mark pad. I've already pre-dusted with my powder tool, so I just went over the piece so that we don't have any embossing powder sticking. But this has a really nice distressed effect, so if you do get any errors or any places that are missing, it's not going to look out of place. And you just want to go over it with your embossing pad, firm pressure so that it goes through all the details in the stencil. I also sometimes in the thinner areas like here on the radar, I like to just go in with the edge of my pad. I find I pick up more detail that way. And I'm going to just do the same over here as well. So once you feel you have a good inked image, you can always just lift this up a little bit and have a peek through. I can see that there's an area in here that's not so detailed. Just try not to move the paper underneath the stencil, because it's not taped down, because we want all of that detail in there. So once you're happy with your image, you can remove your stencil, and I'm going to be using some of the black Nuvo, it's called Glitter Noir embossing powder. It has a nice bit of sparkle in it, and it's going to pick up some of those details. So again, I'm going to just tip this over. I like using this tidy tray. I find it's really great for capturing all the details. And it's wide enough for a card front size piece of cardstock, so you don't have any waste. Link these up in the description for you. Let's give it a tap on the back. So you can see there, we've got a nice lot of detail onto our card. And this has a little funnel on this side, so it's great for when you want to tip back in your embossing powder. You can just very gently, everything goes back in there. I then just give it a tap or use my powder tool, that gets the rest out. And then if I'm using particularly a dark one, I just make sure it's out of all of these grooves. Tiny bit on my finger, but there's really no waste at all. So now I'm going to heat this with my Wagner heat tool to set it so that we're ready to add on our sentiment. So now that's dry, we're ready to mat it up and also add on our sentiments. So for our sentiment, I'm going to be using the Stampers Anonymous Glorious Bouquet set. There's some really lovely sentiments in here. So you've got You Make Me Happy, Happy Birthday, a note to say thank you for everything, so proud of you, congrats on your big day, just a little, hello and friend. And I really like how you can build these sentiments up and use them together. So I'm going to take this out. This also comes with an acrylic block in this set. Because this stamp is so large, they've put in a custom sized acrylic block. I think it's really nice that they've thought of everything. And of course you can store these in your stamp binders, or you can store them in some pockets, whichever you prefer. But I'm just going to do hello and friend for our sentiment on this one. Have my acrylic block here ready to go. So I love these acrylic blocks that have the grid lines on them. So I can line up my hello, and then I can line up my friend. And I know that my sentiments are going to be in line. I'm going to be using just a plain black ink. I have the Lawn Fawn Jet Black here. And so I'm just going to tap and stamp that out. And now I'm going to cut out my sentiment. Been trying out the new Tonic Guillotine, and it does actually have a guideline here so that I can line up, first of all, my hello friend. I'm also just going to chop a little bit off so that I don't waste cardstock. And then this line that I've now made, I know that is straight with my sentiment, so I can start trimming it down. So I put that line against my grid here. And then of course I know this one is lined. So I just work round around the piece, always lining up the latest cut edge with the guideline. And now I'm just going to do the final one. This is a really nice size. You can cut 8.5 by 11 cardstock in this one, but it's still nice and compact. It fits on your desktop. You could take it to a crop. Lots of options there. Now I'm going to fold this in half. Normally I would score it, but the Nina does do quite well if you just fold it. I fold it one way and then I fold it the opposite way and firm it up with my Teflon bone folder. So now I'm going to add my first matting layer. So this is that piece of black cardstock. I like the Lawn Fawn Licorice Black. And I'm just using a Tonic Funky Tape Runner. You'll notice I always mat with my cardstock flat so that I don't have any bounce. Picked up a little bit of embossing powder on there, but we're going to cover it up anyway. So I'm going to just go around this piece and stick this on. And now to add on our sentiment, I'm just going to use a little bit of foam tape. I like using the 3M foam, and I buy a big roll of it. This has lasted me nearly a year, so you can see how long it lasts and you know how many cards I make. Grab my snips here. And we'll just cut that one down. Any excess, if I cut piece too long, I just keep it on the edge of the foam roll there. It stays nice and sticky. Means I don't have to waste anything. And now I'm just going to pop this on here, down here. So there's a really fun way to be able to use embossing powder with your stencils. I hope you've enjoyed today's tutorial here with the Crafters Workshop. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button or stamp it if you prefer, and do give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this tutorial. We've really loved having you here, and we'll see you again very soon. Happy stamping! Bye!